WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Open Mic Show. I'm Tim Coco, your host for this 50-year staple of democracy in the Merrimack Valley. Chris Porter is producing in master control. I don't know if the sound is available yet on Channel 22, but I see they are having some problem bringing up the video, so please stay with us, and I'm sure it will be resolved. I would recommend, if they're listening, to maybe just shut down their browser and restart. This is, the modern age where you send video over the internet, but perhaps they have too slow a connection over there. All right, well, that's a good sign. Let's see what happens. All right, anyway, coming up on the program tonight, we have Scott Goudsward. Now, if that name sounds familiar, well, his brother is a frequent contributor to this program and a historian and writer for WHAV who's produced some great articles you may have read in the Haverhill Heritage series. Scott, I think, made a cameo, we'll call it that, appearance on the program earlier, but he's released a new novel, Fountain of the Dead. We're going to learn more from Scott T. Goudsward. I wonder what the T stands for. Probably some great name like Tim. Maybe not. So Scott Goudsward will be joining us later on in the program. Just a couple of heads up. Haverhill Exchange Club, it's having its 15th annual Rick Barry St. Patrick's Day breakfast. I'm going to mention a little bit of it tonight, but we're going to try to squeeze in some people from the Exchange Club next week to talk a little more about it. But also next week, very, very important guest, Nancy Silberkleit, the co-CEO of Archie Comics, is going to be here in the studio. Nancy is going to be in the studio to discuss, this is Women's Month, discuss contributions by women over the course of history. And we're going to learn more about how audiences, people who read Archie Comics, are coming up to date on things like that. So this is going to be a great program with Nancy Silberkleit next week. I'd like to also ask listeners, if you think about it, and please do during the program, there'll be lots of time tonight, is there an outstanding but unrecognized woman in Greater Haverhill that has achieved so much or helped so many but has gone unrecognized? That's something Nancy wants to know about, and we do too. So think about that. Is there a woman in Greater Haverhill who has done some great work or helped many people, or perhaps had a personal accomplishment, but hasn't been recognized? We're looking for unsung heroes, so please keep that in mind. Also on the program tonight, we're going to talk about the first part of a 5-part series appearing at WHAV.net on local news. What happened to local news? And, we hear so many people say, well, it's the internet, stupid. Well, it's more than that. And I'll tell you more about that and solicit your viewpoint as well. Last week, we kind of rushed through a little bit of the history of WHAV and FM. And we may, if we have time, work a little more of that in as well. I see that I am completely frozen at Channel 22. I suspect they don't have the bandwidth because they're running so many other things over there, don't have the bandwidth to put us on. Or maybe they have, an old Windows 95 computer or something. I'm not quite sure. Maybe Chris can help them with some technical support. I'm not quite sure. We are sending a reduced stream, so I'm not quite sure what the issues are. WHAV's Open Mic Show is heard and seen for the next 2 hours at WHAV.tv on your computer or smartphone, and with a little bit of luck, will be seen at Channel 22 on HC Media in Haverhill. You can always listen to not just this program, but WHAV in general, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at WHAV.net, again on your computer or smartphone. AM radio, 1640, Northern Haverhill, Plastow, Atkinson, New Hampshire. WHAV's new FM, 97.9, still coming soon. We could use your help. Right now, some major developments have occurred that we could speed up the time that we get WHAV FM on the air. The only thing holding us up right now, frankly, are your contributions. WHAV is a non-profit organization. Neither Chris nor I get a dime for working here, but I do think you'll agree that otherwise professional product and service to the community, but for the way the video displays on Channel 22. But hopefully you can help. Contributions are accepted. You can call Chris at 978-374-1900 to make a contribution or to get the address. Anything is appreciated. You can also online with your credit card, WHAV.net. Anywhere you see Tom Bergeron's photograph, you can contribute. And words of condolences. Tom lost his father 4 months ago, and he lost his mother this weekend. Very, very sad indeed. Tom... he's very thoughtful, and he said, they were apart 4 months, but now they'll be together forever. The Bergeron family is in our thoughts tonight. All right, and then you can also listen to WHAV depending on what else is on cable television and over Channel 8, Haverhill Channel 99, the education channel, Methuen Channels 8 and 22 on Comcast, Channel 32 on Verizon Fios, and on Channel 17 in both Plastow and Sandown, New Hampshire on Comcast. Been pointing out lately also, if you have one of those Apple TV boxes, maybe that's how you get your Netflix, or a Roku box, maybe that's how you get your Netflix or Hulu. Well, on Apple TV, you can go to the radio button and scroll to Golden Oldies and then WHAV to listen. And on the Roku, you can use TuneIn. You can also use TuneIn on your phone. TuneIn, just search for WHAV, and we're right there. All right, maybe Chris will tell me what's going on. He just spoke with Haverhill Community Television, and he can tell the rest of us maybe the string broke on the tin cans.
Apparently, from what I understand, they're having problems with Comcast right now, and he's working on it, trying to get everything up and running. He said all their computers are down.
Yeah, I offered some friendly but unsolicited advice last week to them. When thousands of people tune in to WHAV on the internet, those thousands of requests don't actually come into this building. Instead, we send 3 different flavors of the stream, just depending on your technology and your speed. We send 3 out to a external server that can handle that capacity. Same with our television. We send that out to a third party that can handle the traffic, because frankly, there isn't enough. If you took every Comcast cable in Haverhill and tied them together, there wouldn't be enough bandwidth. So maybe someone will take my advice, and they'll send their on-demand programs and other things to a third-party server, and then there'll be less skipping, stuttering, and so on. But Chris, do you think our audio is on at least, or no?
I am not sure.
All right, so used to be that we were the background sound on 22, but now I don't know, there's some kind of static that's always on there now. All right. Well, in any event, I think I may have told you about this last week. Actually, before I do that, let's, of course, remind you, I was a little ahead of myself last week, remind you that if you wish someone a happy birthday or a couple a happy anniversary, and those events are taking place in April, they could be the winner of a free 7-inch cake from Albie D's Second Generation Italian Bakery, 140 South Main Street in Bradford. Really, these are the most delicious cakes you've ever had. No offense, Grandma. These are, choice of vanilla or chocolate, sugar frosting, and a real treat. And a lucky birthday winner or a couple having an anniversary in April could win this cake. And it's very easy. All you have to do is call in and wish the individual a happy birthday or a couple a happy anniversary. Chris takes down the name just before you go on the air. The name is placed into the hat, literally, and we draw that the last Monday of the month. So really no excuse. And besides, you can do what Brian does. Brian, the corporal, or he's the lieutenant. I always make he's a lieutenant. Make sure that he wishes happy birthday to a neighbor or a close friend who will share a piece of cake. So it's really always a good strategy, something you might want to consider. All right. We have half the answer to the trivia question from Kimball Tavern Antiques, corner of Salem and South Main Streets, last week. And I don't know if I'm going to give you that hint now, but last week, Jerry from Methuen answered half the question. If you were paying attention, you now have half the answer. So here's the question. A famous musician watched The Devil and Daniel Webster and was inspired to write a song. What's the name of the song, and what is the name of the group? Half that answer was given out last week, so really easy for you to look up the rest of it on the internet, so there's no reason you can't do that. And you could win a $10 gift certificate, same as cash, at Kimball Tavern Antiques, corner of Salem and South Main Streets. All right, let's go to the phones. You are on the open mic.
Hello, Tim.
Is this the lieutenant?
Yes, sir.
I almost demoted you to corporal. I was mixing you up with the corporal. I was telling them about your great strategy for making sure you wish someone a happy birthday that lives next door or is close by, so that you can get a free slice of Albie D's Second Generation Italian Bakery cake.
That's right.
So what is on your mind, Brian?
Well, I just wanted to get this trivia stuff accomplished.
Oh, you're going to take a shot at the trivia question?
Yep.
Chris, we really need some kind of music for that. You going to come up with something? Chris just isn't doing his job. All right.
Just a drum roll?
Well, yeah, we could get a drum roll, or, I guess we really shouldn't do the Jeopardy music. That doesn't quite work. All right, he's going to answer the phone anyway. All right, Brian.
Well, thanks to Jerry in Methuen.
Thanks to Jerry from Methuen,
who called in and gave the major clue and gave the title of the song, Bad Moon Rising, which was performed by the Creedence Clearwater Revival.
And you are the winner.
And I would appreciate it if you would send that certificate to Jerry in Methuen.
Really?
Yeah, because, after all, I wouldn't have bothered if it hadn't been for Jerry. He did the work. He deserves the prize.
Aren't you nice? Jerry, if you're listening in Methuen, the lieutenant, Brian, wants you to win the $10 gift certificate to Kimball Tavern Antiques because you came up with the biggest part of the answer and he just wanted to help you with the rest of it. Is that right, Brian?
That's correct.
Aren't you very generous? Don't we have very generous listeners on the Open Mic Show? That is so kind of you.
We're all family here.
That's right. We are a family. Sometimes we fight and so on, but that's what families are, right? No, we've never fought. No, I'm just kidding around. Oh, all right. Anything else on your mind, Brian?
Oh, just the usual. Trying to think of fundraising ideas for you and for me.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe share something. Yeah, folks, if you don't know what Brian's referring to, I mean, that horrible year he had where his life savings was stolen and just so much more. And if you can help him out, we were working on something a while back. I'll have to check with Chris to see whatever became of that. But you're still accepting contributions at any Haverhill Bank branch. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. So just actually, the bank may not know the name Lieutenant. So this is for Brian Langlois, spelled Langlois, right? Langlois. Brian Langlois. You can help him out. He lost his life savings just after his wife passed away. Really sad story, folks, and I'm not trying to put Brian on the spot, but I just want you to know the dire straits he's in and still in. Money was never found. So if you could make a contribution, you can stop by any Haverhill Bank branch, mention his name, Brian Langlois, and I'm sure they'll fix you right up and put your contribution to good use. So, Brian, thanks for the reminder on that.
All right. Well, I appreciate talking it out. And, the police put it on the shelf. They've got other things to check out, and so they're not even doing anything with it anymore. So,
have you considered going to the Exchange Club's 15th annual Rick Berry St. Patrick's Day breakfast, Brian?
No, if it were breakfast, I wouldn't go. See, I want to save room for the corned beef and cabbage.
Oh, okay. On the 17th, so you're going to go to Peddler's Daughter or something?
In all this time, I've never been in there.
Really? WHAV just co-sponsored an event with the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce at Peddler's Daughter, and it was, as they say, a nice time was had by all.
That's good.
Chris doesn't even remember going. That's how good a time he had. No, actually, I don't know that we reminded Chris, which is the problem here. These things we put it on the calendar and they're suddenly that day. But so now I'm telling Chris. So Exchange Club of Haverhill's 15th annual Rick Berry St. Patrick's Day breakfast to benefit child abuse prevention and other Exchange Club programs takes place at the ungodly hour of 7:30 a.m. Thursday, March 17th at the Borough's Function Facility, 887 Boston Road in Ward Hill. Tickets are $30 a person, $250 for a table of 10, and you can get tickets at haverhillexchangeclub.com.
That's a bargain.
So that looks good. All right, Chris is telling me I need to take a break, but maybe, Brian, you'll tune in. We have Scott Goudsward. You've heard of the other Goudsward.
Oh, yeah.
His brother is coming. Scott Goudsward has written his own novel. Actually, this is not the first time either. We're overdue in having him on the program, but his new novel is Fountain of the Dead. Obviously, he's a horror writer. Yes, we'll need those sound effects later, Brian, so that's good. He also has written things like Trailer Trash and Traps. I'm trying to think. Has he been down on... Oh, and I'm not going to say. All right. Brian, before I get into trouble, I'm going to take this break. How's that?
Okay.
Hey, thank you for giving your prize, $10 gift certificate to Kimball Tavern Antiques, to Jerry in Methuen, who came up with half that answer.
And you have a good night, Tim.
All right, take care. Good night.
I'll be tuned.
All right, take care. Bye. All right, now while we're waiting for me to get out of that frozen position on Channel 22, we're going to take a brief break. This hour, we're going to hear about this day in Massachusetts history on Mass Moments. And we'll be back with more of the Open Mic Show after that.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
This is listener-supported community radio, WHAV. WHAV is the Merrimack Valley's Pacifica affiliate.
Johnny Dollar. Johnny Dollar, in spite of writing the fanciest expense accounts in the industry, is in high demand by his employers. He's a freelance insurance investigator on the job only when the stakes are sky high. When murder or fraud covers a venal grab for profits, it's Johnny's job to jolt the facts from those involved. Detective work in all corners of the world is a specialty for yours truly, Johnny Dollar, one of your great Sunday listening treats on CBS Radio.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, airs at 10 p.m. Sunday night with an encore performance at 1 a.m.
Today is March 7th. On this day in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell received a patent for the telephone. Born in Scotland, Bell settled in Boston when he was in his early 20s. He made his living as a teacher of the deaf. On the side, he tinkered with transmitters and electromagnets. In the summer of 1876, Bell gave the first public demonstration of the electrical speech machine he had invented. A few months later, he achieved his ultimate goal, transmitting and receiving spoken words over a telephone line. When Bell died on August 2, 1922, the nation's telephones went silent for 1 minute in a fitting tribute to a man who had done so much to further oral communication. For more about Alexander Graham Bell, go online to massmoments.org. This Massachusetts Moment has been brought to you by the Massachusetts Foundation for the Humanities.
Open mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And welcome back to the Open Mic Show, about 5 minutes before 7 p.m. when Scott T. Goudsward comes by. Yeah, Scott's actually standing by outside, and I'm going to just throw him one very important question before we actually put him on the air. The T must be for Tim, right? A great name like Tim, right? No?
Not quite.
No. What's the T for?
Thomas.
Thomas? Well, there's too many Thomases around.
Good Irish name.
All right, but anyway. All right, so the T is, I knew it wasn't for Tim because I've known the family for too long, and they would have surely mentioned that to me, or surely would have, right? No. Anyway, you just heard on Mass Moments, Alexander Graham Bell, he received his first patent on this date in 1876, and I hope you're aware of the Haverhill connection to Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell was a teacher of the deaf, and Thomas Sanders, owner of a very, very big leather and shoe-related business in downtown Haverhill, hired Alexander Graham Bell to help him with his deaf child. And Alexander Graham Bell was trying to come up with a device that would show speech so that you could see what words were as a device for aiding the deaf. And instead, it made noises. It turned out he had invented the telephone. So Sanders put up a lot of money, very, very big dollars in those days, and financed the telephone, which, of course, we now know was pretty ubiquitous. So, all of that happened because Alexander Graham Bell received his first patent on this date, 1876. Okay, we got about 4 minutes before Scott Goudsward, before we have news and then Scott. Let's go to the phones, try to squeeze in one call. You're on the open mic.
Good evening, Tim. How are you?
Well, did you hear that, Jerry?
Isn't that, I thank Brian very much. This could be a turning point. Here he has given me the prize, and he's had such tough luck. I hope this is the beginning of a turnaround, and he has some, good luck in the immediately.
Well, I guess that's what they mean by passing it forward, right? So he's giving you, well, you answered half the question. And you
I know, but he answered it.
So,
he answered the most important part.
But, Brian's very, very generous, and he wanted you to have that. So we're going to make sure that you get the prize, $10 gift certificate to Kimball Tavern Antiques. And you know what? This is a small world after all. Maybe there's some way we can have you and Brian meet, and maybe HAV will buy the coffee. How's that?
Sure, that'd be fine. You know what? Like I say, sometimes things things are so bad, you don't have any interest. You lose your focus on everything, and but I'm happy that I can call into you on a Monday night and get my mind off my problems, as Brian probably is. That's why he listens, and that's why he calls in too, to try to get try to focus on something and give something to the audience.
No, it's funny. Radio has always played that role. You're right. Radio, even if you're listening to it on a computer or television, radio has often been that friend when you needed one the most. So, Jerry, I think that's a wonderful comment. Thank you very much.
The other thing that I read in the newspaper where Haverhill has finally adopted the one-stop shopping trash removal program, but they are including a small tote for the elderly and a small one. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it's optional. If someone has trouble with the 64-gallon toter, they can get a smaller one. Now, you have that system in Methuen, Jerry?
No, we don't. It's receiving a lot of scrutiny, though, and the same issues were brought forward. The big totes. I calculated them. Now, this is using water as what would be in it. The average tote, for trash itself, not recycling, is about 500 pounds. If it was filled for water, 8.3.
Oh, really?
Pounds.
So if it were completely dense, it would.
Yeah.
Wow.
But with trash, there are some voids.
That's right.
And the recycling tote would be 95 pounds. That if it were filled with water, it would be about 700. But there are also larger voids, and that's a result of not compacting.
Right.
And as a result, it might be in the neighborhood of 500 pounds of recyclable material in that.
Well, I think that's why the mayor wants to have an alternative for people. I mean, it does have wheels, but if someone lives on a third floor or for whatever reason can't keep their barrel, I mean, frankly, the Board of Health doesn't let you keep your barrel at the street. So
I don't know. And we have a schedule. 1 week it's the trash, and then the following week it's the recyclables.
All right. Yeah, we do have trash every week, and then recycling about every other week.
And that's correct. That's the same schedule.
And you may have read at WHAV.net or heard Dana Esmo with the news talk about this, but Haverhill is on the verge of signing a new.
Haverhill is a great city. I say it, and I say it all the time. Just after last Monday's evening program, Mary Lou and I drove down Main Street, and Main Street in Haverhill is, and I realize that there are places in Haverhill, like any community, that are, that are not up to snuff. But I just, when the summer is here and the flowers are in their, it's just It's just wonderful, really. It is.
No, and I appreciate you said that. And I know last week we had a caller say something, and I have to say,
Yes, that's what prompted my call.
that's what I thought. So, but but nothing is perfect, and I suppose some of us still want perfection, and it's not possible.
Yeah.
I know that. But in any event,
a couple of things, Tim. A couple of things that happened in Methuen might be of interest to the audience.
okay,
Tonight,
yeah, real fast though, we have to go to news.
Yeah, tonight is the Wheeler Street issue where Brock's Industries was using Wheeler Ave, which is the street where Regency project is, and
Okay.
the Regency project people were against traffic, 10-wheelers. And then the other thing was there was they're trying to, and they have successfully had one reading of it, introduce core English. In other words, the program of English would be changed, and the classics would be given a second stool. I called one city school committee person, and I told him, I said, why would you do that? Why would you bring in this globalization of the English literature when we have the classics so close? I said, I use a colloquial expression. I said, just if we just run down the street, there's Whittier's birthplace.
Oh, okay.
If we run up to Derry, there's Robert Frost. And then we have Thoreau.
Oh, no, and actually, yeah, you're right. The Concord writers are nearby.
We're in the midst of the classics, really.
A very, very good point, Jerry, and I thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Get to.
I got to get to news, and then our guest, Scott Goudsward's on. So thank you, Jerry.
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
April the 15th is my birthday, my daughter's birthday, and it's tax day.
Oh, wait a minute. Did you write that down? All right, we're going to put that down.
She was married on April the 15th.
Okay, so, all right, so Jerry, and what's your daughter's name?
Mary Beth.
Okay.
And she's a registered nurse. She works at Children's.
All right, Chris is writing this down. Jerry and Mary Beth.
Mary Beth is my daughter, and we're both born April 15th, I was 1928.
Yeah. I hope you weren't born the same time. And then, of course, it's also her anniversary.
It's also her anniversary. She was married on April the 15th.
All right. I know that.
And it's also the anniversary of our annual IRS tax and Department of Revenue's tax form.
Yeah, we're not gonna celebrate that with a cake.
No, we won't celebrate that. Thank you very much, Tim.
Well, thank you, Jerry. All right, take care.
Next week I'll tell you what happened at the council meeting tonight. I'll be able to report to you exactly what happened. I think the hall will be filled.
All right. Well, I look forward to that report. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. We're going to go to news just a little bit late. We're going to try to get back on schedule, so I'm going to give Chris some on-air instruction. I'll tell him actually during how we can fix that. All right. We're going to take a break now for local news with WHAV News Director Dana Esmel, and then Scott Goudsward is here to discuss his new novel, Fountain of the Dead. We'll be back.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:06.
WHAV LP Haverhill. WHAV is a nonprofit community service of Public Media of New England, Incorporated.
Here's what's happening in local news. A Haverhill man faces drunk driving and other motor vehicle charges in district court after his arrest by Haverhill police early Sunday. Kenneth Rios Melendez, 22, of 3 Chick Avenue, Haverhill, was arrested at 12:55 a.m. Sunday at 461 Washington Street. He was charged with driving under the influence of liquor, second offense, unlicensed operation, and 3 counts of leaving the scene of an accident with property damage. In other police news, 2 area motorists arrested separately Friday on unrelated charges of unlicensed driving, among others, are due to appear in Haverhill District Court. Kimberly Nichols, 33, of 355 Washington Street, Haverhill, was arrested at 7:36 p.m. Friday at 32 Washington Avenue. She was charged with driving without a license, operating an unregistered motor vehicle, and improper seat restraint for a passenger under 6. She was also taken into custody on an unspecified outstanding warrant. Earlier Friday at 6:50 p.m., Luis Robles, 52, of Methuen, was arrested by Haverhill police at 186 Monument Street. He was charged with a single count of driving with a revoked license. Also, a Haverhill woman is due in court after her arrest Saturday night on a trespassing charge and for outstanding warrants. Janet Parker, 62, of 127 House Street, Haverhill, was taken into custody at 8:30 p.m. Saturday at 707 Salem Street. Charges under the warrants were not listed on a police log.
Business Bulletin.
In local business notes, Massachusetts House Speaker Robert DeLeo will be the featured speaker at a VIP breakfast forum in Haverhill Wednesday, April 6, prior to the start of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce annual Spring Business Expo, Trade Show, Health and Wellness Fair. DeLeo and Representative Brian S. Dempsey of Haverhill, chairman of the House Committee on Ways and Means, are confirmed attendees of the Business Expo Breakfast Forum from 8 to 9:30 a.m. at Phoenician Restaurant and Michael's Function Halls, 12 Alpha Street, Haverhill, according to a flyer. Others in the local House delegation, including Linda Dean Campbell of Methuen, Diana DeZaglio of Methuen, Leonard Mira of West Newbury, and James Lyons of Andover, were also invited. Cost of the breakfast forum is $28 for MVCC members and $50 for non-members. Admission to the MVCC Spring Business Expo, Trade Show, Health and Wellness Fair from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. is free to the public. For more information, contact the Chamber at 978-686-0900 or visit merrimackvalleychamber.com. Today, WHAV presents the first in a 5-part series examining the evolving and lasting role of local news reporting. The news media has been called the fourth estate because it is supposed to keep the other 3 honest. Absent news reporting, public officials might be emboldened to enrich themselves at the public's expense, harm society in myriad ways, and suppress opposition. Whether on worldwide, national, or local levels, the people have a right to know so they may take action. They also want to know who's building what next door, how much their taxes are going up and why, what their children are learning in school, whether their neighbor sells drugs, what to do during their free moments, and more. Theorists offer many reasons about why local news is threatened. Yes, the internet robbed newspapers of classified and retail advertising revenues and changed the habits of those who consume news, but it is much more than that. In 1960, founder of modern marketing Theodore Levitt explained why railroads were dying, a lesson apparently lost on newspaper publishers. He said, quote, "The railroads did not stop growing because the need for passenger and freight transportation declined. That grew. The railroads are in trouble today not because that need was filled by others, but because it was not filled by the railroads themselves." End quote. Newspapers define their business as putting ink on dead trees and not as providing news to the public. Like people swapping rail seats for driver's seats, readers did not stop devouring news. They turned to other sources. While WHAV airs on a low-power AM radio station, it also streams and publishes stories on the Internet and delivers audio to cable television stations. Even though WHAV is planning to add a new FM radio station to ensure everyone in the community benefits, it still defines itself as a local news organization first. During the rest of this series, readers will learn how WHAV competes with an entrepreneurial mindset, why technology is not simply a cost-cutting tool, where the past leads in the present, and what a bold new vision means for residents. Read today's article in depth at whav.net. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmel.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. The Pentagon claims a U.S. airstrike has killed more than 150 al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. An alleged training camp was targeted after information suggested a large-scale attack was being planned. John Beaver reports from Washington.
Pentagon officials say they've dealt a major blow to the Somalian al-Shabaab militant group. A US drone strike at the weekend, 120 miles north of the capital Mogadishu, killed more than 150 alleged terrorists at a training camp. The Pentagon claims that they have intelligence indicating that the group was preparing for a large-scale attack in Somalia. Al-Shabaab is affiliated with Al-Qaeda and has launched frequent attacks as it tries to overthrow the Western-backed government in Somalia. John Beaver, Washington.
North Korea has threatened to carry out indiscriminate nuclear attacks on the U.S. and South Korea. It comes as the two allies begin the largest joint military exercises ever held on the Korean peninsula. Our U.S. correspondent Nick Harper has more.
The annual event draws anger and condemnation from the North, and as usual, rhetoric. Pyongyang has warned of an all-out offensive and a preemptive nuclear strike of justice against the US and its southern neighbour. The exercises are said to involve 17,000 US and 300,000 South Korean troops, with much of the training centering around computer simulation. Last week, the UN Security Council passed new sanctions, its toughest yet, against North Korea, in response to its recent nuclear test and rocket launch. Nick Harper, New York.
Britain's counter-terror chief says the Islamic State group could be plotting a spectacular attack on UK soil. Mark Rowley's warning also contains his belief that the Islamic State is aiming for bigger attacks around the world after those in Paris last year. Ollie Barrett has this report from London.
Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley says a large-scale attack by IS on UK soil would be a natural next step for the group. He's also revealed that terror-related arrests in the UK hit record levels in 2015, and there was a 57% increase in the last 3 years compared to the 3 before that. Mr. Rowley says psychologists are now being used in counter-terror units because of fears that people with mental health issues are being radicalised. London's Metropolitan Police has been carrying out a review of how it would respond in the face of a Paris-style attack, and Mr. Rowley says the ambitions of IS now go beyond small-scale targets to more ambitious plots.
For more on the day's top stories, you can follow us on Twitter @FeatureStory. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. Across the Merrimack Valley, partly cloudy skies and rather breezy for tonight. Low temperature middle and upper 30s, not all that cold. And during the day Tuesday, developing sunshine, milder 50 to 55. Some clouds on Tuesday night, down around 40 then. And turning out partly to mostly sunny and very mild on Wednesday. High temperature 65 to 70. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
WHAV is on Facebook. For quick access, visit WHAV.net and click on the Facebook icon. This is listener-supported community radio. WHAV LP Haverhill, the Merrimack Valley's Pacifica affiliate.
WHAV Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And this is the show that keeps Chris, our producer, running around. He just adjusted the camera, had to run back in. He's out of breath to control the audio. And but all the work that he does, just compare to what's happening on Channel 22. But anyway, so much for that. All right, I got to turn up Scott's microphone. I know which one it is, so I'll turn up both. But Scott Goudsward is joining us here on the open mic. You've heard his brother frequently on this program. Usually, his brother David is the person we call when we come up with some obscure historical question and then throw it to David at the last minute. And amazingly, he always comes through with the answer to the question.
Are you surprised?
Well, you
having known him for 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we go back at least 100, and you had to live with him though. And I remember visiting. See, David and I went to high school together, and at the times, Scott seemed like this little kid, but I guess as we age, we're probably not that much difference in ages, right?
We do grow up a little bit, yeah.
How old are you?
48.
48. Okay, you were much younger. All right, never mind. I won't even mention how old I am.
Not for as old as David. Well, we won't say that.
Well, that's right. You would know, wouldn't you? Yeah. Well, David just seems older, but no, because he's a historian. All right, Scott Goudsward, who we now know his middle name is Thomas.
Not Tim.
Not Tim. Just a terrible shame. But writes horror stories and novels, edits anthologies, and also writes about horror. He prefers his horror in traditionally visceral vein, according to his bio. He's also on the board of directors of the New England Horror Writers. His latest book is Fountain of the Dead. And is this price right, $14.40?
It's got a $17 price point on it, but Amazon discounts it for some reason. I'm sorry, the certain online retailers discount it.
He can mention Amazon. If you go to whav.net during this program, just scroll down to Members Shop, and you'll see Scott's the first listing because he's the latest one, and you can actually browse the book online, and I think he would love it if you bought it. Frankly, we'd like it too if you bought it, because WHAV makes just a little fraction of something when you buy through whav.net. Now, before we get into Fountain of the Dead, now I remember going to your house years ago when your brother and I were working on such odd projects as unsolved mysteries of the modern world. And the one mystery I always wondered about is how you guys managed to deal with. If my memory serves me correctly, your rooms were littered with things like models of Godzilla.
There were Godzilla models, there were superhero figures, there were comic books, there were tons of books everywhere, magazines, which not quite to the hoarder level, but...
Well, I was going to ask, did this upbringing in this horror that your brother left you, pardon, David, just kidding, David, what motivated you to write about horror, to write horror, and to be so involved in the genre as to chair the group New England Horror Writers?
Well, I can blame my 5th grade English teacher, who read us the Raven and the Telltale Heart when I was at Constantino.
Oh, who was your 5th grade?
Jack Phelan.
Jack Phelan.
So it's all your fault if you're out there listening.
All right, so Jack Phelan, he went on to become what, the principal?
He was the principal of the high school for a while, I believe, but I could be wrong with that.
All right, so you blame Constantino School. No, you credit Constantino. You credit Constantino School.
I blame my brother and my father, but I credit Constantino.
Your father was your father into?
He was into all the old horror and sci-fi movies, like from the 40s and the 50s. I remember when I was a kid, he dragged me to see Jaws, which terrified me for years and years afterwards.
Really? Okay, so that's interesting. So now we know that it actually comes from the dad. Well, I also know that during your, let's say, what is the correct term? Your
I was going to say institutional phase, but that's wrong.
No, I was thinking your formation phase. There's a word for that. But things like Kolchak, The Night Stalker, were on television.
Yep, watching it every night I could.
All right, so that was the kind of upbringing that brings us to a person who writes about horror. All right. Before we get into the new book, Fountain of the Dead, tell us about some of your other works. Now, I pulled a couple titles, but you tell me what belongs on this list and what doesn't. How's that? It's kind of like those Saturday morning shows. What belongs on this list and what doesn't? Trailer Trash and Traps.
Trailer Trash is my first novel. I wrote it God knows how many years ago. It's a vampire novel. It's a standalone book, meaning it's a one-off. There probably won't be any sequels unless someone really desperately wants me to write one. I wrote that, I want to say, back in the 90s. It's based on a short story I wrote of the same name.
Trailer Trash.
Trailer Trash.
Trailer Trash, okay. And then Traps.
Traps is an anthology I edited. I want to say maybe going on 10 years ago. It's my first shot at doing an anthology.
All right. Now, you also edit a newsletter. Is that what's the correct term? A book, a newsletter for New England horror writers?
It's a newsletter, and I've kind of pawned that off on one of the other guys who are in the group.
And what's the name of that?
It's just the New England Horror Writers newsletter, and that goes out to the various members.
But didn't I see something called Wicked something?
Wicked Tales is an anthology we did. That's our third anthology. It's just group members, and I co-edited that one with David Price and Dan Cohane.
Okay, and those are also, so there's a collection of horror style stories.
Correct. It's 20 original stories and 2 reprints.
All right, and so those are also available at whav.net in the members shop. Now, of course, he has worked with his brother on some books. We have Shadows Over Florida, Horror Guide to Massachusetts, Horror Guide to Florida. Have I left one out? We'll get to Snowbound in a minute. Have I left any out?
The 2 that are still in print are Horror Guide to Massachusetts and Horror Guide to Florida, both from Postmortem Press. And right now we're working on a Horror Guide to New Hampshire and Vermont.
Oh, okay. Shadows Over Florida is no longer in print.
No, it is not. Neither is Shadows Over New England.
Oh, Shadows Over New England. So these are very rare, folks, if you have those. All right, Chris is telling me you have to take a break, so we're going to come back. Well, before we do that, just to say, those of you who picked up the book Snowbound with Zombies, also available. Scott contributed to that work as well, donated his cut, as it were, as did David Goudsward, who edited the anthology, and all the other writers, and that book, proceeds from which benefit the John Greenleaf Whittier birthplace in Haverhill. Let's take a brief break for Community Spotlight. We'll be right back with Scott Goudsward.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Last year, WHAV helped local nonprofits by airing nearly 10,000 community spotlight messages. WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Open mic!
Every Monday night, the Open Mic Show brings interesting guests into your homes, presents your take on current events, and dabbles into your home's history. I'm Tim Coco, your host, inviting you to join the chorus of community voices beginning at 6:30 Monday nights right here on WHAV. You may also watch this 50-year staple of democracy live at WHAV.tv and Haverhill Community Television Channel 22. The Open Mic Show was brought to you by Northern Essex Community College, the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council, and WHAV members. Remember, only local radio can bring you this talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Community Spotlight!
The Haverhill Firefighting Museum is creating a memorial commemorating the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack in New York City. Museum board members are looking for personal stories from residents in the greater Haverhill and southern New Hampshire areas. Those with a personal story to share or seeking more information are asked to call Cynthia Graham at 978-994-1854 or Patricia Graham at 978-835-1565. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, this is Mark LeMay.
WHAV Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
And we're back on the Open Mic Show. I'm Tim Coco. My guest is Scott Goudsward of Haverhill. All right, Scott, there's something in the industry known as the starving artist syndrome. So are you one of those who is independently wealthy, or do you have to do something else to buy food?
I would love to say that I'm sitting home every night collecting the Stephen King checks and the royalties, but no, I work full time. I used to work over across the street in the park, but now we moved up to Salem, New Hampshire.
Oh, another business that moved out of Haverhill?
Yep.
Oh, gee, I'm sorry to hear that. All right, so, but Scott is, you don't own the business, so we're not going to blame Scott. But Scott is here. He writes horror stories, if you're just joining us, horror stories, novels, edits anthologies, and he also writes about horror. Tell us about that aspect of your work. Is this like news stories, or?
I think that's going to go towards the horror guides that I do with David.
Oh, I see.
And that's sort of finding the novels and the short stories and the movies where they're set within the states that we're doing, and then doing a really brief summary of them so we can get them into the book and get them formatted properly.
I see. All right. So that's actually some historical research that has to be undertaken, because there's some of these are based on true stories or are true stories.
Most of them are fictional, but David handles all the classical stuff because that's his field, being the researcher and the historian type, but I handle all the modern stuff.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, we're looking for short stories, looking for novels. We go through them, pick up what we can from the net. We talk to other authors, find out who's written what, and then we pull it in from there.
All right, I'm going to ask Chris, can you put a photograph of the book up for our television viewers? This is the cover of the book, and I have to say I was really impressed by the artwork. Pretty spooky, but I couldn't help but notice in the corner, the right-hand side of the cover, Fountain of the Dead, there is a sign, Welcome to Florida. Were you trying to tell your brother something, or does this play a role in the book?
That is a role in the book. The characters are going from Medford, Mass. to the Everglades.
Going from Medford to the Everglades. So there's kind of our setting. And is the Fountain of the Dead actually a fountain, or is this a metaphor for?
You will have to read the book to find that out.
See, this is the reasons why I don't interview authors well, because you never know, you're going to give away the story. So, Fountain of the Dead. We already have our first question. The setting, somewhere between Medford and the Everglades. Do we spend more time in Medford or the Everglades?
It's more of a road trip. So there's a short time in Medford and there's a short time in the Everglades, and the rest of the book is getting to there from here.
All right,
I was originally going to try to set it in Haverhill, but I need a view of the skyline of Boston, so Medford won out.
All right, so that's another clue as to what might be going on here. So there's an urban skyline, and the illustration. Can you tell us who deserves credit for the illustration?
You know, I knew it, and I forgot it on the way over here.
All right.
But the artist works for Postmodern Press, who's the publisher for David and I books. And I told them what I wanted on the cover, and within a couple of weeks, they gave me like a rough drawing of it.
All right. What if someone were to ask you? Let's do the 30-second elevator speech. So you're in the elevator going up to the 4th floor of the Coombs Building in Washington Square, and someone says, "Wow, you wrote a book? What is it about?"
Zombies. But I'll go a little bit more in depth at that. It's about a bunch of survivors of the zombie apocalypse who are living in a fortified cul-de-sac in Medford, and they get talked into going to the Everglades by a crazed scientist who's convinced he's found the cure to the zombie bite.
Now he has me interested. So we have a crazed scientist. We have people living in, how did you describe their place in Medford?
A cul-de-sac.
A cul-de-sac, but you had another
Fortified.
Fortified. I mean, how do you fortify a cul-de-sac?
Read the book.
Read the book. Yeah, see, he's good because you see, other authors would, not want to answer and then leave me with yes or no answers. So he's just telling me no. That's too much detail. Read the book. It's $14.40 with the discounts at Amazon.com. Again, you can go to whav.net. Just scroll down a little bit. Member shop, Scott's up first, and you
It
can
is the only
do that.
giant zombie face on your webpage.
Yeah, right now. We have had a giant zombie face. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. That was the city council. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. I'm in one of those moods tonight. I don't know what it is, but so we'll see how it goes. All right. So we go from a fortified cul-de-sac on a road trip. Sounds like Donald Trump's campaign.
I think my book is less chaotic.
It's less chaotic.
And when I was plotting out the route down there, it's an actual drivable route. I did the entire thing through Google Maps.
Oh, you see, that's where that historical, I mean, maybe it's not historical, but that research comes into play. So one could actually drive the route.
You could, if you wanted to go through Connecticut and Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
All right, I think we're skipping some
in Georgia.
spaces. All right. I drove this route some years ago. Maybe not exactly your route, but I will tell you that it takes, 13 hours to get to North Carolina or something like that.
It's about a 22-hour trip to go straight through to Florida.
So I was doing my best at this road trip, and I finally pulled off the highway, and there's like some odd chain down there called the Waffle House. Everywhere you go, there's a Waffle House. Maybe it's a setting for characters in your book. I don't know.
I did not use Waffle House. I thought about using Denny's for a short while, but no.
All right, so I made this trip. Finally, I had to get off the highway and check in at one of those roadside motels. And of course, they apologize that if you don't have a reservation, you have to pay the rate card, which I think was $29. So it wasn't horrible. And then, but you get back on the road and say, well, I'm halfway there. I will tell you, the ride just in Florida seems forever. So I can almost imagine what happens along the way. Can you tell us about the characters? Do they have names? Are they consistent throughout the story?
They are fairly consistent throughout the entire story. I tried to get a decent grouping of different, archetypes for so there's a couple of kids. There's a computer person. There's a ex-post person. There's an abuse survivor, who's one of the main characters. There's a high school nurse, and a few other people.
Now, I do ask this question frequently of authors. So are these composites of people you know, or are they kind of right off people you know?
They are all totally random people.
Come on. You're inspired by something,
no,
right?
These are just the first time I haven't based characters on actual people.
This is the first time?
Yeah.
I mean, you have in the past.
I have killed off so many people I know in books and screenplays, I can't even count them.
Really? Okay, so he has this kind of a little side thing going where, maybe after counseling or something, he's gotten over this. But so I love the idea, though. People you don't like, you write about them in your horror books and you kill them off.
And I do awful things to them.
And he does awful things to them.
Which comes from working retail management for 7 or 8 years back, many years ago.
And now, how many of you can identify with that? So this is retail management, which means someone comes up to the counter, they're standing right in front of the item they want to buy and ask you where it is. But maybe not that kind of retail.
It was Walden Books, so yes, they come in looking for a book that's read that they saw on Oprah. And they want us to just magically pull it out off the shelf.
Well, actually, that kind of reminds me. People call here and say, you played a song about a week ago. Mm-hmm. I think it was a male voice, but it might have been someone else. And they kind of went, ha, 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 ha. And can you tell me the name of that song?
Well, it's obviously Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves, isn't it?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. Chris is the expert at that. Chris, you could play 3 notes of any song, and he will identify it. That's incredible. Tell you what, we're going to take a brief break for local weather. Then we're going to return with Scott Goudsward and the Open Mic Show. And maybe we have a guest appearance by his brother.
Oh, yeehaw.
And we're going to learn a little bit more about Fountain of the Dead. We'll be right back.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 7:37.
This is listener-supported community radio, WHAV. WHAV is the Merrimack Valley's Pacifica affiliate.
Catch the wave!
The most trusted man in America, news anchor Walter Cronkite, once said, "It is absolutely essential in a democracy to have competition in the media, a lot of competition." That sentiment is one of the driving forces behind WHAV's expanded local news effort. This is News Director Dana Esmail inviting you to listen to my hourly weekday newscasts right here on WHAV. You'll also find the area's most comprehensive local news reporting at whav.net on your computer or smartphone. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
And that's the way it is.
Wave weather!
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. Across the Merrimack Valley, partly cloudy skies and rather breezy for tonight. Low temperature, middle and upper 30s, not all that cold. And during the day Tuesday, developing sunshine, milder, 50 to 55. Some clouds on Tuesday night, down around 40 then. And turning out partly to mostly sunny and very mild on Wednesday. High temperature 65 to 70. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin B. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
This hour of the Open Mic Show is being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. You can learn more at merrimackvalley.info. All right, Scott Goudsward is with us. You know his brother Dave, who's on the phone holding. We'll keep him holding just a bit longer so we can ask this question. If someone wants to buy this book, maybe they want to buy it as a gift, is there any way they can see you to get it signed?
Oddly enough, I'm a whore. I'm an author. That's what we do. This Saturday, I'm at Annie's Bookstop in Worcester from 3 to 6. I'm at Super Mega Fest in Marlborough in the beginning of April. I'll be signing with David at the Magic Parlor in Salem, Mass. on Essex Street in May. And
He
then
even
after
has
that,
all the dates down. Is there a way that someone can get these dates? Is it on your? Is it on
they can
your
go
website?
on my website.
All right, and your website is
www.goudsward.com/Scott.
All right. So, actually, if you just want to keep it as simple as possible, you can click on Scott's name when you get there. But Goudsward, Goudsward.
There you go.
Now, of course, most people, David will joke about this, I'm sure, will say Goudsworth.
No, David says it wrong.
There's a Goudsward. No, I didn't say he did it.
He says it Goudsward, which is the old Dutch pronunciation of the name.
I don't think I've heard that. Maybe we're going to bring David into this discussion. David Goudsward, are you there?
I can't believe you're bad-mouthing Waffle House.
I don't even know what made me think of it.
I'm crushed. That's the closest we've got to civilization down here.
All right, so it goes all the way down south.
Actually, I just drove up to St. Augustine and back, and the only way I kept my sanity was by counting the Waffle Houses along I-95.
See, folks, they really are ubiquitous.
3.5 hours up, 3.5 hours back, 11 different exits off of I-95 have a Waffle House. They average a Waffle House every 3.5 miles.
My goodness, I was really half kidding, but my goodness, this is worth writing a horror story about. And
It's like
Scott,
Gardens
If you
up
go
here,
east
you
to Route
have,
1,
what, 8 in
the
Haverhill
ratio
now?
goes higher.
well, no, actually, Scott makes a good point. I guess the Southerners looking north would say, "Yeah, you're one to talk with the Dunkin' Donuts everywhere." All right, so that's a good point. So. David, since you're here too, you and Scott will both be available together to sign some of your work soon?
Well, Scott pretty much knows the schedule better than I do. I will be up there in May. I'll be down in Westford, I believe, on the 4th or 5th, whatever the Thursday is.
And we might
on
be...
the 7th, May 7th, I'm doing the Whittier Birthplace.
That's right. Whittier Birthplace, May 7th. David Goudsward, Scott, others. Well, I guess we haven't figured out the exact... We're trying to figure out exactly whether we're going to limit this. And I know David sent me some texts over the weekend, and I was tied up with something, so we haven't had a chance to discuss it. Probably now is not the time. But it could be as narrow as actual histories and as broad as anybody with a pen. Is that right, David?
Well, we do like to be flexible.
So,
last year was the new book, and we were kind of emphasizing Whittier as a folklorist. This year, we're trying to look a little more at Whittier as a
you
story.
can't hear any of this.
I can always hear David.
Actually, it's funny. Your brother does not have headphones on, and yet he says he can still hear you. So this
Not well, but I can hear him.
All right. So now he has headphones. All right. So. Seems to me,
just for the record, the last name in the proper Dutch is actually Goudsward, which I don't pronounce it that way. I just pronounce it with a more guttural sound so people spell it correctly.
Well, let's make sure people know it for their website, because they'll get a list of these dates where these signatures can be had. Goudsward, Goudsward.com.
Yes,
and,
we both share the page. He has his own section. I have my own, and there's a calendar that's interconnected between the two.
All right, so that's good to know. All right, David, have you read Fountain of the Dead?
I have.
And so
it's a thrill moment.
Well, I have to say, at the beginning of the show, if you heard me, at the beginning of the segment, I noticed there's a welcome to Florida sign in there, and I thought maybe, there's still some sibling rivalry, and he decided to bring the horror to where you live.
I think the horror already exists in Florida. Never mind you bring it down there.
The horror's already here.
Okay, you both think alike, too. All right, so Fountain of the Dead. It's a road trip from well-fortified cul-de-sac in Medford, as Scott describes it.
Method. The D is silent.
To the Everglades in Florida. And there are zombies and apparently no Waffle Houses along the way.
But there is a Dunk's.
Oh, I'm sure they're there, but they were the first thing to go.
All right, folks, if you want to learn more, if you want just a real shortcut, you don't have to remember anything, just go to WHAV's website, WHAV.net. Click on
Jack Kerouac meets The Walking Dead.
All right, members shop. Actually, David, David is a good sport. He got displaced in the rankings on WHAV's website because everyone who has a newer listing then moves him down. So that's just pressure on David to write something else to put him back on top.
Excuse me for preferring quality over quantity.
Well, didn't he get pushed down by John McLeveen?
Actually, I didn't want to remind him that he'd been pushed down twice. All right. Yes, John McLeveen was on this program.
Damn fiction writers spitting this stuff out so fast.
Now, also on this program, we've had the Dent Sisters, and I believe they're members of New England Horror Writers. Is that right?
They are, and they are also in my writers group.
And they're also in Snowbound with Zombies.
Yes, they are. Both of them are.
Now, we may as well just do a plug for this. We have a second here. Is this New England Horror Writers? Is this for established authors, or this could be someone like Chris who wants to try writing?
It's for anyone. We're an open group. We have a Facebook page, and we have a website. It's newenglandhorror.org.
newenglandhorror.org.
And as an outsider, since I don't qualify, since I live in Florida, it's a very good networking opportunity. Plus, if you're going to do shows, these guys go as a group. So it's a social event and a chance to peddle books to the public.
social event and peddle books to the public. Isn't there another classier way of saying that?
Not really.
Now, I will tell you, now that I have them both here, I'm going to put them both on the spot. You know, we have some joking aside between the two brothers. One thing that David gives great credit to Scott for, and that is Scott has this amazing ability to carry 200 or 300 books with him everywhere he goes, and shows up at these events. He's got a fold-out cabinet and shelf and boxes and displays. Am I mischaracterizing that?
No, but it's not quite
He has
hundreds.
a car
but
that seats 8 but only fits him.
it is dozens.
Dozens.
I've got a couple of metal racks I bring to every show. I've got Rubbermaid totes full of books and bookmarks and business cards and little things for the table and everything else.
So
He's
Dave,
got it down to a science. He really does.
all right, so there's something we could, all of us could learn something. So, David, what did you say? He has a car that seats 8, but he's the only one who fits in it?
Yeah.
If I'm doing a show, there's room for me and my cooler, so I can get a couple cans of Diet Coke in there.
A couple cans of Diet Coke, too. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up this segment. Either one of you have something to say to the others or to the listeners?
Just a quick plug on March 19th.
March 19th.
At the ACT Theater Company building in North Andover, there's a charity event, charitable trivia event, and I believe that's running from 6:30 till 9. It's there's a little fee to enter, and there are cash prizes. There's a.
Do you know how little the fee is?
I want to say it's $20.
No, that sounds reasonable.
You can come by yourself, or you can form a team, however you want to do it.
All right, ACT Theater Company building in North Andover.
It's on Osgood Street in the old Western building.
Oh, it's in the old Western Electric.
It's kind of right as you're coming down the street, so it looks like a demilitarized zone.
Okay.
But it's there. It's a nice building. We've been there several times.
All right, ACT Theater Company, North Andover, the old Western Electric building. $20 to get in, 6:30 to 9 p.m. on March 19th, and
March
that's
19th,
a
that's a
Saturday. Saturday, March 19th. I'll keep this handy, folks. If any of you don't have a pen handy or you're racing down the highway trying to get home late from work, we'll give you that if you want to give us a call. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for joining us. Scott did a great job, and I'll ask David later, to critique me. He's the one who's told me I do a terrible job interviewing authors, and so I've developed.
You're getting better.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have to
Lord
say,
knows you've had enough practice.
well, it's like kind of Larry King. I mean, what would you do if you didn't have authors on a late night show? I mean,
he does call every week, so you get the chance to interview him and interrogate him.
All right.
Well, we have a system. If he's desperate for content, he starts talking about reading his clothes. That's a cue that I'm going to call in.
Yeah, actually, David. First of all, it didn't start out as innocently as that. David was banging his head against the wall, saying, "Oh my goodness, he's just rambling on. I better call in and calm him down," something like that. So that's how it works.
Not the first time I've walked you off the ledge.
And this goes back, Scott says it started in 5th grade at Constantino School. For David and I, it was at Haverhill High School in Mr. Pine's class, where we started Unsolved Mysteries of the Modern World. And then we went off to solve all of them. They're all solved now. Right?
Especially Sasquatches, right?
Actually, I don't think we ever did Sasquatches. We did the Loch Ness Monster because the guy who invented the sonar they were using in the 70s was up across the street from Mystery Hill.
Well, I'm trying to recall. If this was during the blizzard of '78, we might have lost some snow days and couldn't squeeze it in there. So I don't actually recall what years we did this, David.
Well, it would have been a junior year, I believe. So
that would have been
77, 78.
Oh, so we can blame it on the blizzard of '78.
I do have some of the original files we collected, and we do have very little Sasquatch.
Back then, I remember, you see, David was the creative one. I was the one who had to go out and sell the ads. Somehow, I think we're still in a rut here. So I remember our first advertiser was Howard Johnson's. And I don't know if David remembers that level of detail. I don't know why I do.
I don't remember having advertising.
We had one.
Have you been holding out on me?
We had one booklet.
Yeah, we did, and I don't remember advertising. I'll have to see if I can track it down and look.
Yeah, see if you have it. I believe we had an ad for Howard Johnson's in there because that was in the walking distance of my home. So, that's the limitations of high school publishing. All right, folks, we had a great time here. David Goudsward on the phone, his brother Scott T. Goudsward here in the studio talking about his new book, Fountain of the Dead. It's really low price, $14.40 if these discounts hold at Amazon, and you can get there real fast by going to whav.net, scrolling down, and you'll see books by Scott Goudsward. Scott, thank you very much
Thank you for having me.
Coming on the program, and thank you for your contributions to Snowbound with Zombies.
It's a fun little project to work on, even with David behind the helm.
Even with David behind the scene. All right. As in now we're starting to crack that one. All right. We'll be right back. We're going to take a brief break this hour for a movie review. I can't remember which one it is right now, but you'll hear it in just a second.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
Are you listening to WHAV on cable television? If so, join WHAV in thanking the board, staff, and members of your local public access channel.
Catch the wave!
The most trusted man in America, news anchor Walter Cronkite, once said, "It is absolutely essential in a democracy to have competition in the media, a lot of competition." That sentiment is one of the driving forces behind WHAV's expanded local news effort. This is News Director Dana Esmail inviting you to listen to my hourly weekday newscasts right here on WHAV. You will also find the area's most comprehensive local news reporting at whav.net on your computer or smartphone. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
And that's the way it is.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, hail the golden age of movie making. When it comes to comedy or drama, the Coen brothers always manage to insert a touch of the surreal. Hail Caesar is no different. Although technically a comedy, parts of it feel otherworldly, and the dilemmas that the characters face are very much serious, at least to them, even when their situations are bordering on the ridiculous. On its surface, Hail Caesar is the straightforward tale of a haggard studio executive, Eddie Mannix, played by Josh Brolin, who deals with the many issues that arise over the course of a few days for a major studio. One such event is the kidnapping of a major star, played here by real-life star George Clooney, by a bunch of caricature communist screenwriters who are demanding money they feel is owed to them given their labor in the creation of many blockbuster pictures. If that doesn't sound very communist, don't worry. Like many of the things in Hail Caesar, characters act in contradictory ways. Set in 1951, the film is a nod to the golden age of Hollywood. We see fake movies that are obvious nods to the musicals, biblical epics, and cowboy films that dominated the era. The most obvious is the title of the movie, which harkens back to DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Likewise, many of the characters are based on real-life people, such as Scarlett Johansson's Deanne Moran, who is based on Esther Williams. Her situation of being pregnant by a married actor and the studio dealing with it is actually based on the real-life story of Loretta Young. While this will go over the heads of many, it's this inside material that will be appreciated by film buffs. Hail Caesar may not go on to become a Coen Brothers classic, but it will be remembered for its nod to a bygone era and some sophisticated laughs. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and beat us back on our page on YouTube.
WHAV Open Mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents The Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
What a treat that was. Scott Goudsward right here on the Open Mic Show discussing his new novel, Fountain of the Dead. This hour of Open Mic being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. I want to tell you just before we take another break, because the way I've paced myself, I'm way off schedule here, and Chris is just livid over there that I haven't kept my times. But no, he's not. Chris is very good-natured. All right. The Haverhill Exchange Club is holding its 15th annual Rick Barry St. Patrick's Day Breakfast. Proceeds benefit child abuse prevention and other Exchange Club programs. The breakfast takes place at 7:30 in the morning, otherwise known as the middle of the night for me. 7:30 a.m. Thursday, March 17th at DeBarros in Ward Hill. Tickets are $30 a person, $250 for a table of 10. You can buy your individual tickets at haverhillexchangeclub.com. If you want a phone number, keep this one handy. Here's one for Patrick Driscoll, 978-374. This is a great number, 978-374-0000. Wow. 978-374-0000 for tickets to the Haverhill Exchange Club St. Patrick's Day Breakfast, Thursday, March 17th. Now, of course, you heard Brian earlier in the program. He's skipping breakfast because he wants to fill up on the corned beef and cabbage later that day. But others, you might want to do this. It's always a lot of fun. And I think next week we're going to have someone from Exchange Club here. We're going to try to work them in, because also next week, live in the studio, Nancy Silberkleit. You've heard her in a telephone interview here, but she's going to be here in the studio. She is one of the chief executive officers of Archie Comics. Archie from Haverhill, Riverdale, Archie Comics. Nancy is going to be here, and we're going to talk about Women's History Month. And I'd like to, we have to take a break for news in just a second, but I'm going to ask you if you just do me a favor, and even if you're watching this later as a rerun, but if it's before the 14th, send me a note where I'd like to hear from people who know of a woman who has done wonderful things personally, professionally, for the community, but has not received any recognition. I want those unsung heroes to be recognized when Nancy Silberkleit comes here next week. So please keep that in mind. You can nominate anybody. It could be someone who's just quietly taking care of all the problems at home. Could be someone who's run a very large company and hasn't received recognition. Really, Nancy wants to hear from you. So if you'd let us know, the CEO of Archie Comics will be here next week, right here, live in the studio on the Open Mic Show. And, Nancy is funny. She calls herself the accidental boss. She didn't intend to run Archie Comics, but tragedy struck. Her husband passed away, and she found herself in charge of the company. But she has fallen in love with Haverhill, really has. Now that she's aware that Haverhill was the setting for Riverdale in Archie Comics, she has really embraced this, and we're very, very proud to have her on the program. Okay, it's 8 o'clock according to my watch. Let's go to local news with News Director Dana Esmel, national news, local weather, and we'll continue for the final half hour. We're going to talk a little bit about history of FM, and more importantly, the role of local news reporting. Hope you stay with us.
Open mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
It's 8:01.
WHAV LP Haverhill. WHAV is a nonprofit community service of Public Media of New England, Incorporated.
Here's what's happening in local news. Two Haverhill City Councils will present their colleagues Tuesday night a, quote, draft concept, end quote, of a competition among manufacturing businesses which offers $50,000 in other benefits to those, quote, seeking to grow, expand, or scale their business in the city. On the agenda, Council President John A. Mitchison and first-term City Councilor Andy Vargas will discuss a proposed Haverhill Fabrication Scale-Up Challenge from the City of Haverhill, quote, in collaboration with local businesses, nonprofits, and private partners, end quote. According to documents, the competition is targeted at, quote, companies that are developing a physical product, including innovations for the Internet of Things, end quote, and have moved beyond the, quote, startup stages. Quote, this competition is open to all manufacturing-focused scale-ups across a wide range of sectors, from high-tech product engineering and assembly to food production, a statement reads. Quote, Haverhill has a special interest in developing capacity as a Boston area leader in the fabrication of intelligent connected devices, also known as the Internet of Things. Scale-up companies working in the IoT space are especially encouraged to apply, end quote. In addition to a $50,000, quote, prize to be used for any business purpose, a challenge winner would also receive, quote, built-in assistance from local technology, banking, manufacturing, and business specialists who will be available as house doctors, end quote, as well as 40 hours free legal work, publicity, and assistance locating, quote, suitable real estate in Haverhill and discounted rent, end quote. The Haverhill City Council meets at 7 p.m. Tuesday in Theodore A. Pelosi Jr. Council Chambers at Haverhill City Hall. More details are at whav.net. A Haverhill woman, one of 5 personal care attendants or surrogates indicted last month for allegedly defrauding Mass Health by billing for services not rendered, is due to be arraigned Monday on larceny and other charges in Essex Superior Court. Crystal Clark, 36, of Haverhill, was indicted by an Essex County grand jury February 11 on 3 counts of Medicaid false claims and 3 counts of larceny over $250 by false pretenses, according to a statement from Attorney General Maura Healey's office. The charges stem from an investigation by Healey's Medicaid Fraud Division with assistance from Healey's Victim Witness Services Division and the State Auditor's Office. Authorities allege Clark billed Mass Health more than $64,000 for services that were not provided. According to authorities, Clark served as the PCA surrogate for her disabled son and allegedly submitted timesheets certifying that more than 4,000 hours of PCA services were provided to him by Clark's eldest son, boyfriend, and brother between January 2010 and November 2015. Quote, however, the investigation revealed that during these times, the PCAs identified on the timesheets were often working elsewhere and could not have been providing PCA services, a spokesperson said. In separate cases, Clark and 4 others were charged with allegedly defrauding the state's Medicaid program a total of more than $230,000 by either falsely billing for services not rendered or double billing. Quote, Mass Health provides critical health care services for people who otherwise cannot afford them, Healey said. Quote, we allege that these individuals exploited the system and defrauded taxpayers while at the same time diverting resources from those in need, end quote. There's more in-depth coverage at whav.net.
Business Bulletin.
In local business notes, Massachusetts House Speaker Robert DeLeo will be the featured speaker at a VIP breakfast forum in Haverhill Wednesday, April 6, prior to the start of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce annual Spring Business Expo, Trade Show, Health and Wellness Fair. DeLeo and Representative Brian S. Dempsey of Haverhill, chairman of the House Committee on Ways and Means, are confirmed attendees of the Business Expo Breakfast Forum from 8 to 9:30 a.m. at Phoenician Restaurant and Michael's Function Halls, 12 Alpha Street, Haverhill, according to a flyer. Others in the local House delegation, including Linda Dean Campbell of Methuen, Diana DeZoglio of Methuen, Leonard Mira of West Newbury, and James Lyons of Andover, were also invited. Cost of the breakfast forum is $28 for MVCC members and $50 for non-members. Admission to the MVCC Spring Business Expo, Trade Show, Health and Wellness Fair from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. is free to the public. For more information, contact the Chamber at 978-686-0900 or visit MerrimackValleyChamber.com. Remember, WHAV is the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. In the Edwin V. Johnson newsroom, this is Dana Esmel.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. The Pentagon claims a U.S. airstrike has killed more than 150 al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. An alleged training camp was targeted after information suggested a large-scale attack was being planned. John Beaver reports from Washington.
Pentagon officials say they've dealt a major blow to the Somalian al-Shabaab militant group. A U.S. drone strike at the weekend, 120 miles north of the capital Mogadishu, killed more than 150 alleged terrorists at a training camp. The Pentagon claims that they have intelligence indicating that the group was preparing for a large-scale attack in Somalia. Al-Shabaab is affiliated with Al-Qaeda and has launched frequent attacks as it tries to overthrow the Western-backed government in Somalia. John Beaver, Washington.
North Korea has threatened to carry out indiscriminate nuclear attacks on the U.S. and South Korea. It comes as the two allies begin the largest joint military exercises ever held on the Korean peninsula. Our U.S. correspondent Nick Harper has more.
The annual event draws anger and condemnation from the North, and as usual, rhetoric. Pyongyang has warned of an all-out offensive and a preemptive nuclear strike of justice against the US and its southern neighbour. The exercises are said to involve 17,000 US and 300,000 South Korean troops, with much of the training centering around computer simulation. Last week, the UN Security Council passed new sanctions, its toughest yet, against North Korea, in response to its recent nuclear test and rocket launch. Nick Harper, New York.
Britain's counter-terror chief says the Islamic State group could be plotting a spectacular attack on UK soil. Mark Rowley's warning also contains his belief that the Islamic State is aiming for bigger attacks around the world after those in Paris last year. Ollie Barrett has this report from London.
Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley says a large-scale attack by IS on UK soil would be a natural next step for the group. He's also revealed that terror-related arrests in the UK hit record levels in 2015, and there was a 57% increase in the last 3 years compared to the 3 before that. Mr. Rowley says psychologists are now being used in counter-terror units because
Wave weather.
I'm WHAV meteorologist Gary Best with wave weather. Across the Merrimack Valley, partly cloudy skies and rather breezy for tonight. Low temperature middle and upper 30s, not all that cold. And during the day Tuesday, developing sunshine, milder 50 to 55. Some clouds on Tuesday night, down around 40 then. And turning out partly to mostly sunny and very mild on Wednesday. High temperature 65 to 70. This is Gary Best. Your next wave weather coming up in 30 minutes.
For live and local talk, listen to the Open Mic Show Monday nights. You can also see the program at WHAV.tv. WHAV, the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. Stay informed each day with local news, coupled with FSN's worldwide coverage. WHAV LP Haverhill, the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free.
Catch the wave, WHAV, Merrimack Valley. Open mic.
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
This hour of Open Mic being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. Learn a lot more at merrimackvalley.info. merrimackvalley.info. Great organization operated by David Tibbetts, who is the former Secretary of Economic Affairs under Governor Weld. He was also Secretary of Consumer Affairs under Governor Dukakis. Names from the past. All right, open lines right now. You can call 978-374-1900, 978-374-1900. And I'm going to repeat this request. Nancy Silberkleit, the co-CEO of Archie Comics Publications, will be here in the studio live next week, assuming we don't have some kind of a snowstorm or something. Then we'll plan it for the following week. But I would hope winter is over. I know those of you who enjoy winter may not like me saying that, but I would like to think winter is over. But if you know of an unsung hero in the community, particularly a woman who has done some great deeds at home, at work, for the community, and you don't believe she has received adequate recognition, I'm going to ask you to let me know about it. You can do it on the air. You can call 978-374-1900. You can send me a private email. TCOCO, TCOCO, at WHAV.net. Preferably by the end of the week. We'll have Nancy here March 14th, and would like to talk about some of these unsung heroes in the community. I was just telling Chris, our producer, during the break, that it's kind of a shame that we still have to have special recognition like this. That all of us are equals, and we shouldn't have to single out people. But in fact, it is true that on a national level, women doing the same work as men get paid less. It's not fair. We're still in that kind of society. You know, it was only 1920 that women got the right to vote in the United States of America. Pretty incredible, if you ask me. All right, talking about the past a little bit while I wait your telephone calls. Today at WHAV.net was the first of a 5-part series. Part 1, What Happened to Local News Reporting. Now, you are all probably aware that WHAV.net is getting about 5 million page views a month. Now, I say page views. Each person could view a couple of pages and come back each day, but even so, enormous reach at WHAV.net. And so we've figured out how to present local news, but it is a controversy, if you will, nationally, where you find newspapers going out of business, newspapers laying off reporters, contracting, some cutting the number of days they publish, and all of this has been blamed on the internet. Someone named Craig came up with Craigslist, which decided to do classified ads for free, or if you're an employer, $25. Well, newspapers used to make hundreds of dollars on each one of those ads, and the back pages of newspapers really paid quite a bit of their newspaper operation. But I'm not convinced that it's simply the internet. Let me tell you, and this has a very local connection, what I think, and this is what I describe in the article, a series examining the evolution of local news. What I think is a number of things have happened. The interstate highways came, 50 plus years ago, and when they came, zoning rules were relaxed, and you suddenly saw strip shopping centers appearing at interstate highway intersections. And so people left their downtowns and went to those stores. Those stores were typically national chains. You all remember we had some of them in our own downtown, the Sears and Grants. but later Kmart and the Walmarts and the Targets and so on. And what that has done, and well, actually, even look at the hardware business. We've seen the Home Depots and the Lowe's. Luckily, we still have three local hardware stores. We have Ed Trinesky on Winter Street. We have Arthur Sharp on Middlesex Street, and there's an Aubuchon, I think, still at Haverhill Plaza near the old J.M. Fields, if you remember that, or Building 19, whichever member you want to go back to. But what's happened is back 50 years ago, there were local stores that actually bought all of this advertising in the local paper and on the local radio station, WHAV. And then people started going out to the malls. And those stores largely didn't advertise. They were really big. They would go from maybe the big television ads or the regional newspapers like the Boston Globe and so on. And so that is a factor that began hurting, because if the merchant isn't in business, then the merchant isn't advertising. And so that's a factor. But another factor, I believe, urban renewal. Now, it's one of my favorite topics. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. But favorite topics that the wrecking ball came into downtown Haverhill, as it did in other communities, some other communities, those who didn't have foresight. And it took down buildings that were paid for. Now, why is that important? Well, business tends to work on, especially retail, tends to work on very, very thin margins. It may even be down to pennies per item. And so if the predecessors, the owners, have paid off their mortgages, then that's an expense they no longer have. They might still have taxes and the painting and in stocking inventory, but they didn't have that giant expense any longer, so they could afford to stay in downtown Haverhill and to operate and to sell and to advertise on local radio and in local newspapers. But what happened? We tore down those mercantile buildings, and then the owners figured, well, anything else I build, I'm going to have to spend more, and I'm going to have to pay a mortgage. I may as well just close up shop. So we have people who would rather take the interstate highways to the malls. We have the local merchant that says it just isn't worth it anymore. And we see this trickle down that's pretty terrible. But even that is not completely the reason why local news has been hurting. 1979 was the peak in Americans' incomes. Now, you might find that hard to believe, but if adjusted for inflation, on average, what you're making today is not anything more than you made or your family made in 1979. We have had stagnant incomes. When you consider that everything has gone up except paychecks seem like they've gone up, but they haven't gone up enough to cover the costs. I mean, remember gasoline was below $1 a gallon. Now we're pretty reasonable at below $2 or so right now, but there were times when we were at $4. What is the effect of the shrinking paycheck as compared to expenses? Well, we start looking for deals. We go to the Walmarts and we get that Chinese crap. Let me tell you about Chinese crap. I'm talking about the crap that's manufactured in China. So American industries, thanks to trade deals like NAFTA, and now we're talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What did we do? Well, we sent all of our jobs outside the country. That's why Western Electric doesn't have 12,000 workers anymore. And so, these people find something else. Maybe they work at a lower price job, or maybe they just gave up and retired. Maybe some never found work or reduced work or smaller jobs. But as we lost that income, as individuals lost that income, Chris is yawning, we lost that income, then we didn't shop in the stores that advertised, that kept the newspaper and the radio station afloat. So I think the loss of local news is much more than the internet. Because WHAB uses the internet, it sends out its music streams, it sends out its newscasts, it publishes on the web, but this is what's happened. And, you know, a newspaper or even a large radio station has expenses, very large expenses. A big radio station, you know, lots of dollars and energy to keep those big transmitters on, and the big steel towers. Not to say that we're not going to have those expenses ourselves soon, and we need your help with that. But printing presses, tons and tons of steel, and barrels of ink, and rolls of paper. Well, at a certain point, the economics aren't there. So during the rest of this week, WHAV on its website is going to continue this series about the evolution of local news and why we think WHAV has the answer. 5 million page views a month. WHAV is virtually reaching every household. This is something that hasn't happened in 50 years when there was only one newspaper and one radio station in town. But let's talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a brief break for Community Spotlight, and we'll be back with more of the Open Mic Show.
Open Mic!
Tim Coco and the Open Mic will be right back. Get in on the action. Call 978-374-1900 or email tcoco@whav.net. If you are enjoying this program, please consider making a donation right now. Your donations to not-for-profit WHAV help keep these vital community services on the air. Donate online at www.whav.net.
WHAV is the only FM station assigned to the city of Haverhill. The sooner you contribute at whav.net, the sooner WHAV signs on at 97.9 FM. Just look for the photograph of Tom Bergeron, honorary chairperson of WHAV's Make Waves campaign.
Catch the wave!
Those political sound bites you hear on the news are, at best, incomplete and could be misleading or even outright lies. This is David Pakman. Take time to delve into the truth by listening to The David Pakman Show, Tuesday through Friday nights at 8 on WHAV. Lack of logic and reason are exposed on The David Pakman Show as newsmakers collapse under cross-examination. Remember, only local radio can bring you this talk opportunity, but only WHAV does.
Community Spotlight!
The Haverhill Firefighting Museum is creating a memorial commemorating the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack in New York City. Museum board members are looking for personal stories from residents in the greater Haverhill and southern New Hampshire areas. Those with a personal story to share or seeking more information are asked to call Cynthia Graham at 978-994-1854 or Patricia Graham at 978-835-1565. Someone you know is on WHAV. To submit or read your own nonprofit announcements, click on the Contact tab at whav.net or email news@whav.net. In the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, this is Mark LeMay.
WHAV Open Mic!
From the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom, WHAV presents the Open Mic Show with Tim Coco. Make your voice heard. Call 978-374-1900. That's 978-374-1900. Or email tcoco@whav.net.
Mike Show is being brought to you by the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council. Smart companies choose the Merrimack Valley. Just a few minutes left. Get your calls in, 978-374-1900. Just continuing a thought on the news business. You know, someone named Theodore Levitt. He was the editor of the Harvard Business Review, but he's considered the father of modern marketing. And he said in 1960 that railroads, and that was the problem of the day, railroads were going out of business. They were failing bankruptcies. And he said the problem was definition. See, if railroads had defined themselves as being in the transportation business rather than running heavy iron objects on rails, they might very well have survived and prospered rather than letting the cargoes go to trailer trucks and airplanes and so on. So if the railroads define themselves as providing this steel structure on rails instead of transporting goods by whatever means. And this, I think, also is the problem with newspapers. Newspapers think their business is putting ink on dead trees. And that is really, I think their business is providing news, or if you want to be a little more cynical, providing advertising. So they could have gotten more involved in other media, and they just didn't do that. So what we're seeing is fewer reporters. But you know what is really at stake? Chris, do we have a call? No, we don't. Someone calls here, but they don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to Chris. He's got all these women coming after him all the time. It's incredible. What's that? Yeah, he says he wishes, but I know better. I know he's very, very popular, Chris. But in any event, democracy itself is at stake because we're not going to say necessarily this happens in Haverhill, but in other communities, absent the media kind of poking around in town and city halls and looking under the carpet and behind the drapes, if it weren't for reporters, and now there are fewer of them, elected officials, appointed officials might be taking money, might be taking bribes. Not to say that's happening here, but it could happen with a different set of people because the media's job is what's called the fourth estate. The media's job is to watch the other three estates. And that has come to mean that we have to watch for illegal activity. We want to watch for someone building something unsafe near our homes or our water supplies. Look at what happened in Flint, Michigan. If we had a strong media, maybe someone would have discovered that changing the water supply would cause the lead to come out of the pipes that poison the kids in Flint, Michigan. Maybe if we had a strong media, things like that could be averted. And so it is critical that the WHAV survives because it has become the only Haverhill-based news source, and it's always free. The news is always available. There's no paywalls. You don't get 5 articles and cut off unless you buy a subscription. The stories are there. The obituaries are there. Stories about business, stories about people, stories about our government, stories about civic and charitable events are there every day. Right here, twice an hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on the air and all the time, 24 hours a day at whav.net. I hope you'll be able to read the series this week to learn more about this approach and how FM fits this, because WHAV is, we'll say, media agnostic. I thought I had invented the term, but apparently it's been out there, and that is we don't rely on any one media. Some people think of us as the sound on cable television. Some people think of us as the streaming radio on their cell phones. Some of us just think of the web pages as being kind of the new daily newspaper. Some read the email only. Some listen on AM radio. The difference is WHAV defines itself as being in the news and information business, not in the radio business. So that's why you'll find us on all social media sites, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Google+, on Tumblr, and I think there's something called Path. We do all of those things because the audience is everywhere these days. And pardon me if I'm sounding a little bit like another chamber executive who spouts the benefits, but we're really at a critical time. It is very possible that WHAV-FM will go on the air very, very soon with your help. But we'll have to continue that discussion next week. So Stay tuned to the Open Mic Show next week. Nancy Silberkleit, Archie Comics CEO, is going to be here in studio, and we hope to have you with us. Thanks to Chris Porter in Master Control and all of you out there for listening. Good night.
Open mic!
Join Tim Coco live on the Open Mic again next Monday night at 6:30. The opinions expressed on the Open Mic Show are not necessarily those of WHAV, its underwriters, or affiliated stations. The Open Mic Show came to you from the Edwin V. Johnson Newsroom.